statistic just came out. 77% of rapes in France, in Paris, 77% of rapes were caused by foreigners. Now, what does that mean to be a foreigner? It doesn't mean first, second, or third generation immigrant. No. That's not who's causing crime. These are migrants without a passport. 77% of all rapes in Paris were caused by non-French citizens who don't even have passports. Bonjour, hi, and welcome back to another episode of Matthew's Always Wrong. And today, it's a very controversial show. And I think it'll be a start of a sort of series going on a little bit more that I really want to dig deep on this question. So this is kind of a, it's a hot topic right now. We're going to be talking about immigration in Canada and how, we're being flooded. And listen, okay, whenever you talk about this issue, everyone's going to go, he's a racist, he's a xenophobe, whatever, right? So I just want to point this out. Before I start, here's what I'm going to say, okay? Immigration is good to a certain extent. Mass migration and immigration are two very different things. And even within immigration, we should be bringing skilled immigrants. We shouldn't be bringing over criminals. It's not racist to say that we have borders for a reason. We can't just let the entirety of Africa into this country. We can't let everyone in the Middle East in here. That's the starting point I want to take, because the second you want to talk about this issue, it's going to be all these woke people, all these leftist ideologues who are going to go, you hate poor people, you hate all these people. And you know what? I don't want a poor criminal coming from Iran coming in our streets where our tax dollars are going to be funding this guy's drug addiction. Okay, maybe I don't want that. So, I've got a lot of stories to go over that all relate to this immigration and broader issue of, this idea that used to be a big conspiracy theory. It's not really happening, but now it's becoming more and more mainstream as people are opening their eyes. You want to talk about a genocide? Let's talk about the white genocide. Let's talk about the Great Replacement. For those of you who don't know, the Great Replacement is this idea that the global elite are trying to essentially wipe out white people by flooding in all these third world migrants from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East into all the European and all the Western countries, North America, in order to essentially eliminate the greatest evil of all, white people, because every white person is essentially a descendant from these European colonizers. So because a bunch of people in the past were very successful at doing war, us today, we have to suffer the consequences. If you want to talk about any group that's the most oppressed in Western culture right now, it's young, white, straight males. That is, by definition, who's being discriminated against the most. And you go, that's not real. In 2021, due to increasing DEI policies in America, in 2021, what percentage of people hired do you think were people of color? And mind you, people of color in the US are around 30-40%, right? So you'd assume it's somewhere around there. Maybe a little higher. Maybe we got to give them a little boost. No. 98% of all new hires in America in 2021 were minorities. And there's countless stories of where you've got these white guys, essentially, who are working for all these companies, and they're being told either, we're not going to hire you because you're white, you're not part of a minority, you're not part of an oppressed group. Or they'll go, sorry, we can't give you the promotion. Yeah, we get it, you worked very hard, you did very well. However, we have this black lesbian who just got here and needs the promotion more than you. That's the reality of the world we're living in, and to say that it's not happening is just to be blindly ignorant of the facts. Again, that's not to say that I hate all brown people, that I hate all black people. That's not true. That's not true. But who built this country? And you're going to say immigrants built this country. Yeah, white immigrants from Europe. And then whatever they'll say, especially about Canada, but what about all the Chinese who built, yeah, the 10 Chinese who built the railroads? Okay, sure, you win. And by the way, in terms of slavery, Canada was one of the biggest recipients of all the free slaves. All the slaves tried to escape, they would go to Canada, and they'd be given free rights. But they still faced oppression. You can't win with these people. No matter what, it's this self-repeating cycle where one group is the worst, and then they'll turn on themselves. This white guilt thing where it goes, oh, because I'm a white, I have to give up all these things because my ancestors maybe, oppressed minorities. And that's what you're seeing. A lot of, especially these woke liberal women are going, they're voting for all these policies. They're being, guys, we have to be nice. We have to let in all these refugees, these asylum seekers. And then guess what happens? Everything goes to shit. So in Canada, the reason why we're so much more open towards immigration than America, for example, is because we've been told for the past 2 decades, 3 decades, however long, for a very long time we've been told, these immigrants are only coming here because they're skilled workers filling jobs that no one else can fill. So there are a lot of job vacancies, and let's say as electricians. What they'll tell you is we're bringing in as many high-level electricians to fill up all the space, the jobs, because there's 1 million vacant jobs, and Canadians don't want to work, despite our unemployment levels being much higher than America's, nearly double. So that's the narrative, is that we're actually benefiting from all these immigrants coming in, because they're filling up these jobs, they're high skilled, they have high levels of education, they come here, they create businesses, they make more jobs. It's a net positive to society. That's where I have an issue with that. Because not only is that narrative not true, taxpayers are the ones footing the bill. Yes, when we do bring in skilled workers who have high levels of education, university graduates, whatever it is, they do provide net benefits to society and produce a surplus when it comes to the economy. However, that is not all who we're bringing in. We're also bringing in refugees, and we're also bringing in the families of all these people. So let's say you're this skilled tech worker coming from India, right? You alone will provide a net benefit to Canadian society and to the economic system, correct? But then you say, hey government, look, I'm here, let me bring my whole family over. So let's say they then bring over the whole family. It says 5 other people who come over. Those people are not a net add to society. What will they do? They're going to work low skill jobs for low pay. They'll work in fast food. They'll work at the grocery store. They'll work all these jobs that are normally reserved for high school, college students, for them to get experience in the real world. So in totality, they're bringing down that positive boost from that skilled migrant. They're dragging it down and becoming a net cost to taxpayers. The number for the taxpayers is roughly $6,000 per immigrant that we give, that we do not receive, that we give. In 2012, where the immigration rates were at 260,000 a year, the estimated cost for bringing in these immigrants, housing them, providing healthcare, providing childcare, providing all these services, was $20 billion. And why is that? Well, this whole skilled jobs mirage accounts for roughly a quarter of all direct immigration. The rest, like I said, were refugees and non-value-adding family members. So let's look at the actual numbers, okay? The number of complete immigrants who came here, so people who come here, who are permanent residents, and who then become citizens, 473,000 immigrants. The average that Justin Trudeau will be was targeting for 2023 to 2025 is 465,000, so a little less, right? That number does not include foreign temporary workers, student visas, and refugees. It doesn't account for all these things. When you account for all those other things, we're closer to 800,000 immigrants in the span of 1 year. We have Canada as the highest population growth of any G7 nation, and yet our economy is one of the least productive, is growing at some of the slowest paces. So you gotta wonder, how much benefits are these people actually bringing in? That's a fact. If you look at this, if you look at the numbers, more low-skilled migrants who come in allow for productivity and wage stagnation. Why? Because instead of innovating, instead of investing in their workers, companies know that, look, if this guy isn't, we can just replace him, because there's this endless stream of people coming in. Before it used to be like, oh, this high school student, okay, we can mold them, we can help them improve, right? And it's kind of a longer term investment, which then leads to higher productivity gains. Now it's like, I don't like this guy, boom, out, new guy in, he's gonna be gone in 3 months, new guy in. And then they never have to give anyone raises, so wages stay lower. It does put a downward pressure on wages. That's a fact. Anyone who tells you that immigration doesn't push down wages is lying to you. But let's look at the numbers. So, in totality for these immigrants, the median income is $10,000 lower than the average Canadian, than the median Canadian. But when you looked at the skilled migrants who come over here for economic benefits, the ones who are high skilled, have higher levels of education, and who go to jobs that are needed, their median income is actually higher than the average Canadian, which is a good thing. But it's the refugees and the families who bring down that average so hard that it becomes a burden to taxpayers. It was $20 billion in 2012 with half the number. Imagine quadrupling that number, how much we're spending on immigration. In total, right now, there are roughly 2.5 million temporary immigrants in Canada. That includes temporary foreign students, workers, etc. 2.5 million. And that is one of the reasons, as essentially the main reason, as to why housing prices have spiked so much. Isn't it weird that housing prices spiked at roughly the same time that we doubled our immigration rates? And all these people are going to tell, no, immigration doesn't, student visas don't increase housing prices. We're building at the same pace that we've been building since 1970, which is during one of the biggest population booms through the baby boomers. And somehow prices have just continuously gone up. Maybe it's because our population growth is skyrocketing. And I'll tell you right now, it's not because people are having children. So you have all these people come in. Then, to add on top of that, there's a lot of scamming going on. So a lot of these people who get the student visas, they're supposed to be here for 3 years. They have to prove that they got an acceptance letter from a university. And the universities love this because they can charge so much more money to these foreign people, to Asian students, to Middle Eastern students, whatever it may be, the universities charge, and the CEGEPs and the colleges, they charge 5 times more, 10 times more than what the average Canadian will pay. So they love bringing in all these, these foreign students. Again, it's not a bad thing. People getting an education is good. But the problem is when people start scamming the system, and then there's no repercussions towards these people once they do scam the system. So, in 2023, around 700 Indian students were facing deportation because they faked acceptance letters. Guess what happened? They were meant to be deported, but then that decision was halted this year so that they can plead their case. Essentially what they're saying is, it wasn't their fault, they were victims of scamming. Yeah, 700 people were victims of scamming because they all somehow faked their documents. Not only that, it's very popular in certain places, especially in Ontario, where you have these phantom schools. It's these fake schools that write these acceptance letters, but they're not real schools, or they're very little schools that don't really exist. So the government sees us and they go, oh, okay, well, they got an acceptance letter, it's a university. Sure, come on over. And then guess what? They don't leave. First of all, they don't leave. Okay, they don't leave. They stay. They go get jobs. That's that. Then, here's a good thing. The Canadian government just introduced some new rules about students only being able to work a maximum of 20 hours a week. Because what was happening is that, oh, you came here for school, right? How are you working full time? Are you not going to class? Oh, you're not going to class. Oh, I see what's going on. So the system's being scammed. The system isn't built to start deporting people. So instead, we just kind of, once they're in, they're in. That's really what's happening. No matter who you are, once you're in, you're basically in. And then to keep adding on to this, you've got these policies that are weak on crime. So in BC, in British Columbia, this guy, Mohammed Abdallah Mohammed El Bahoud, whatever his name is. How does he have 2 Mohammeds in his name? I don't really care. Who's 24. He came to Canada when he was 19. All right? So he's been here 5 years. He recently was there was a big scandal, it was a big news story, because he stabbed a guy. He stabbed him in the stomach, slashed his legs. The guy had to get staple stitches, the whole thing. All right? They say that he fell in with the wrong group of people, and he was an alcoholic, and he had mental health problems. So, instead of getting jail time, you know what he got? 2 years probation for stabbing someone repeatedly and making them have real serious, almost fatal injuries. You're here for 5 years and you're stabbing people. Are these the type of people we want to be bringing over? Oh, but that's not all of them. What happens when you bring poor people from places that they're not developed, they don't have the same laws as us, they don't believe in the same things as us. They're poor, they're uneducated, they come here, they get maybe some jobs, but mostly they're just sticking on welfare, they're getting money from the government, they're doing drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, and then they're committing crime. And the government isn't doing anything about it because this government's in their newfound deepness. They're going, well, if you prosecute all the criminals, we put them in jail. It's kind of mean to the criminals. It's like the Toronto news story about leaving your car keys in the front of your house. It's the same idea. It's all the same thing. If you punish criminals, then their feelings will be hurt, and it's all a mental health crisis. Yeah, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. When 9/11 happened, everyone in Palestine was celebrating. Okay, I'll just say that. I'm not making a statement. I don't actually care about what's going on in the Middle East. And I don't think anyone in Canada should give a shit. Why? Because we have a lot of problems here. You know, they're going to start bringing over Gazans. Why do we want Gazans? I don't really care. I'm not going to get into the whole Palestine thing. We'll get into that in a separate thing. But look, I care about Canada. I'm Canada 1. I'm not Palestine 1. I'm not Israel 1. I don't give a shit about the Middle East. I care about what's going on here. Who's coming over here? They're not all skilled. They're not all here to fix the jobs. So why is it that we've been bringing over hundreds and hundreds, millions of immigrants over the Justin Trudeau's tenure, or almost tenure? We bring in over millions of immigrants who are supposed to have filled up all the vacant positions, and yet we still have a labor shortage. How does that work? Are you seeing top-level executives from these people? No, they're going to, you have a quarter of them who are very skilled, who would welcome them. But that should essentially be everyone we're taking in. I don't want more refugees. Look, it's not our job to fix the world. Canada isn't an influential empire. It's not our job. Our job is to have a good country here. Not fix all of the Middle East, not fix all of Africa. We're spending too much on helping all these other countries. And yet we can't help the people here. We've got homeless in the metro. We've got homeless on the bus. We've got people doing drugs at parks in British Columbia. They're doing heroin in front of schools. That's what's happening. And yet we keep bringing over these people, and guess what happens? Crime goes up. Let's look at France, for example. So the entirety of Europe is essentially being flooded with these Middle Eastern, Northern African migrants. Not all of them are legal, I'll tell you that much. And they're causing real havoc, because when you have these poor, uneducated people who don't understand the culture, who don't actually give a shit, and who don't share any of the values of these European countries, there's a lot of issues. Turns out they cause a lot of crime. They make the cities dirty. They start burning their trash in trash fires. Oh, but that's just racism. That's not true. You can't prove it. All right. New statistic just came out. 77% of rapes in France, in Paris, 77% of rapes were caused by foreigners. Now, what does that mean to be a foreigner? It doesn't mean first, second, or third generation immigrant. No. That's not who's causing crime. These are migrants without a passport. 77% of all rapes in Paris were caused by non-French citizens who don't even have passports. Not only that, a whole lot of these migrants, over 60% of these migrants going to Europe, are functionally illiterate, including in their own language. I don't think it's a racism problem. I think it's a problem that you have dumb people coming from places that are not the same. They're not educated, and they're here to cause crime because they're poor. So what are they going to do? They're going to rob, they're going to rape, they're going to do all the crime. But we have to be nice to the refugees. Okay, why don't you go to Gaza? Why don't you go to Egypt and go fix the crisis? Why don't you go to India and go help? Oh wait, because when you do, they'll rape you. All these white women talking about how we gotta fix, we gotta fix their countries because it's our fault somehow. It's always the European, it's always the white people's fault. We gotta replace the whites because they're the most evil. Take some pride, eh? White people, we've been taking the blame for a long time. Maybe it's time that, summer's coming along. White Boy Summer, and I really want to talk about that next episode. White Boy Summer is back. So yeah, look at France. Look what's going on. Who's causing the crime? I don't know. Probably the native French are causing all the crime. Let's keep going. So I want to talk a little bit about, the different policies that the different political parties in Canada are looking at to solve the immigration crisis. Here's the thing. They're not talking about it. Nobody's acknowledging that the housing prices massively skyrocketing, the shortage is caused by a massive influx of these people. You know, used to be, you get some immigrants in here, they'd assimilate, they'd join the culture, their kids would go to the schools, you'd build a community with other Canadians. Now, they just keep coming in. There's no more assimilation because apparently Canada has no culture. White people have no culture. All right, as you tweet that on your iPhone. Made by white people, by the way. Not only that, the Multiculturalism Act in Canada essentially just allows these people to come in, ignore all of our culture, even though we're the host country. They ignore our culture, our history, our past, you know? And they're like, you have to care about our culture instead. You saw Pierre Poilievre, you saw Justin Trudeau pandering to the Sikhs, wearing the, I don't even know what they're wearing, the head, whatever, and singing in Sikh. Look, sure, you can admire their culture, but what they should be doing is they should be admiring Canadian. So yeah, let's look at Trudeau's immigration policy. So Justin Trudeau, they put out a statement for 2025 to 2026, and their immigration targets. 500,000 a year, average. 30,000 more per year than we already have. But then he says, we have to recalibrate with the foreign temporary workers. We have to recalibrate with the student visas, because that's the issue. Maybe, you got a little bit too many people coming in, and our systems are overloaded, and we can't integrate all these people. And not only that, they don't want to integrate. A lot of them don't want to integrate. When I see someone who's then, I'll see these Indian people or whatever, and they'll be rocking Canada swag, I know they're Canada One. Some people come here, they respect the culture. They want to integrate. They love the culture. But a lot of them, they don't even try and speak English. They don't try and speak French. Then you've got Poilievre. The problem with Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, is that he won't even talk about the issue. He won't even mention it. When reporters ask him explicitly, what are you going to do about immigration, or what's causing the housing crisis, he won't even acknowledge the immigration crisis. He won't even talk about it. He goes, we'll have to work with communities to tie immigration to housing builds. He doesn't give a direct answer. He just goes, we have to build more houses. Maybe instead of doing that, destroying the landscape, destroying all the natural parks and whatever, maybe slow down the number of people coming here to a more manageable level, because that's all it comes down to. It's mass migration versus immigration at a sustainable long-term level. Yeah, our birth rates are lower. But look, you can't bring in everybody. You can't bring in the entirety of the third world to our country. I'm sorry, you just can't. And I don't really like how Poilievre isn't talking about these things. It's seeming, as we go forward, he is talking about issues, crime, gas tax, housing. But a lot of these issues, they're almost trivial. He seems to be, the Liberals, the Conservatives, the two main party, they're basically the same. Okay, yeah, one's more, whatever. They're basically the same. They're not really going to change anything radically. They just want to keep the status quo going, don't want to hurt too many people, don't want to step on too many toes. So I kind of think Poilievre, as we go forward, I'm kind of thinking he's more and more of a shrill. He's kind of just like riding these waves. Oh, the immigration crisis, it's all Trudeau's fault, I'll fix it though. But not addressing the root cause. The only politician that I think has a great plan, not even good, a spectacular plan on immigration is Maxime Bernier of the People's Party of Canada, the PPC, which is called, it's a Nazi organization. They're white nationalists. They're the most right-wing party of Canadian politics. they're like barely Republican. That's because you already know Canadian politics are already shifted left. They're kind of like on the level that the Republicans are on. That's where it's going. So his immigration plan is bring down immigration to a much more manageable level. So between 100 and 150,000. He's also planning on lowering the percentage of family reunification, refugee, so reduce those numbers, get more skilled immigrants coming here instead, ending birth tourism, which is where you've got these temporary workers who come in, they have a child, and that child is immediately a Canadian citizen. It's these birthrights where if you're born in Canada, you're therefore a Canadian citizen automatically. And what's happening a lot is that people are coming here for a very short period of time. They're having a kid. Oh, my kid's Canadian. I can stay now. Without having to go through the whole process. So I want to read a few things from his actual platform. So, reform the immigration point system and related programs to accept a larger proportion of economic immigrants with the right skills, so to actually fill the shortages of labor. Substantially lower the number of immigrants under family reunification, including abolishing the program for parents and grandparents. Yeah. Why are we bringing over your grandparents? Making birth tourism illegal, substantially lower the number of visas for foreign students. That would reduce pressure on the housing market. Increase resources for the RCMP, CSIS, Canadian Immigration, to do interviews, background checks, to make sure we're not bringing in all the criminals of Venezuela. Accept fewer refugee, and give priority to refugees belonging to persecuted groups who have nowhere to go in neighboring countries. For example, Christians, Yazidis, and members of other minority religions in majority Muslim countries. You know. Rely on private sponsorships instead of having the government pay for all the cost of resettling refugees in Canada. And take Canada out of the UN Global Compact for Migration. These plans seem not only reasonable, they make the most sense, and are probably the best policy out of any Canadian politics right now. The People's Party of Canada is the only party out of all of Canadian politics that will actually try and introduce these radical changes, which aren't even that radical. Everyone will say, these are massive radical issues. No, these are just right-wing issues. They're conservative issues with true conservative Canadian values. They're also in favor of repealing the Multicultural Act and a bunch of other things. You guys should really check out the People's Party of Canada. And I think Maxime Bernier is probably the best candidate. Will he win? No, he is very far right. And Canadian politics aren't really about going. So what I think you have to do is you have to, campaign on a more left-leaning policy. And then once you win, then you introduce all these right-wing things. But again, I really support Maxime, and we're going to be doing a lot of things with him going forward. So I just want to get into, Poilievre, Trudeau, no. Just no. All right. Poilievre is better than Trudeau, but Maxime Bernier is better than both by a large margin. You got Trudeau here. You got Poilievre, he is better. Right? At least he shares some conservative values. And then you got Maxime Bernier, who's all the way at the top. He's much better. I think Canada, it kind of needs to go through, here it's a blue wave, but this would be a purple. So the People's Party of Canada is a purple color party. But in Canada, the Republican and Democrats, which are blue and red, or red and blue, it's actually switched, so the Liberals are red here, and the Conservatives are blue. Whatever. But I think Canada's going to have to go through a massive blue shift as the world goes through this red wave. Anyway, so that's just the start of what I really want to say. There's so much more to talk about, and I will be coming out with a lot more content about this on the show, but we're having a few technical difficulties tonight, and we have got a lot of things planned. So thank you for listening, as always, and hey, maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know, except I do know. And what I do know is that I Am Canada won. There's a lot of Canada One people out there, but they're not fighting enough against this wave of globalism, against this wave of destroying white people. It's time that we take charge and we start fighting for what we believe in, especially in a strong, unified Canada. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.